Hey friends, this is Pastor Mark, and I'm here to do a 10-minute mind dump of information, history, and context for Daniel and the lions, which is our Sunday school lesson. So hopefully for those of you who are teaching, this is helpful. Uh, the story of Daniel is found within the book of Daniel, which is the 27th book of the Bible. It's pretty deep into the Old Testament, which has 39 books and out of the 66 in the Bible. Daniel is it's one of these stories, these accounts that we get of just individuals within Israel's history. It is the Bible gives us within the grand scheme of this narrative, which starts with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our father, son, and grandson. Jacob is renamed Israel. Israel has a big family. They become a country, the country of Israel, into which Jesus is later born. That's the short story. The longer story is a lot happens in there. And years after Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their family has moved down to Egypt. They've grown into a very numerous people, and they are put into slavery by Pharaoh. Moses brings them out about 1,500 years before Jesus. Moses brings them to the promised land. They take over, and then about 1,000 years-ish before Jesus, they become a country with a king. They have Saul, they have David. Well, the country after King Solomon, it divides in half. It splits, it ruptures, it fractures. The northern kingdom is known as Israel. The southern kingdom is known as Judah. All right. Fast forward another 400 years. And the northern kingdom has already been taken into exile by Assyria. They never come back really intact. The southern kingdom is conquered by Babylon in 586 BC, so 586 years before Jesus. And that's our context. The king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, takes many of the important people away to Babylon. They will eventually come back, but not in the story. And Daniel apparently was not taken with that first group, but Nebuchadnezzar sends back and says, I want some young men of the royal family, bring them. And Daniel and three of his companions, who are Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, are taken to Babylon. They are all renamed. Daniel is renamed Belteshazzar. Hananiah is called Shadrach. Mishael is called Meshach. And Azariah is called Abednego. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, if you have heard of them before, you might have. Those are their Babylonian names. And they weren't asked. They were just renamed because the king could do that. They end up becoming important in the kingdom of Babylon because the king Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and he tells his wise men, tell me the interpretation of the dream. They're like, oh, we could do that. He says, and tell me the dream. And they're like, dude, no one can do that. And he's like, execute them. Daniel steps up, and God tells him what the dream is, and he tells the king, and I guess ends up saving the group. But the king is really impressed by that. And so he promotes Daniel. And after Daniel tells him the interpretation of the dream, he promotes Daniel. And Daniel says, oh, by the way, can you promote my friends as well? And so Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego all become important people in the government. Daniel sits in the king's court, so he's sort of special. People in the kingdom who are biased against Jewish people anyway are looking for a chance to knock down Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from their position in the government. And so when King Nebuchadnezzar, who is very important, very big, makes a gigantic statue of himself and orders people to worship the statue, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's rivals say, "Oh, king, look, they're not worshiping, and they should be thrown into the fiery furnace because that's what you said would happen to people who don't pray to your statue." And the king, brings them in, and this is what they say to the king. They say, "If God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire and out of your hand, O king, let him deliver us. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, and we will not worship the golden statue that you have set up." I'm just reading out of the Bible if you wonder what I'm doing. And the king is really unimpressed with that response. And so he is furious. He chucks them into this blistering fiery furnace, and God saves them. And they are not burned. And they end up coming out. And the king is really impressed with that and orders people to not mess with the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. In the meantime, Daniel is becoming quite an interpreter of dreams. And so he interprets another one, and that is grand. And then King Nebuchadnezzar passes. Well, he interprets another dream. The dream is kind of bad news for the king, and Daniel survives it, so he must be in favor. Nebuchadnezzar passes. His son takes over. His son is very full of himself. His son throws this massive party. He takes the captured goblets and utensils from Israel's temple, and he uses them as just like stuff to drink out of, not holy at all, for this party. God is unimpressed with that. God sends a mysterious ghostly hand to write on the wall. King Belshazzar, that was his name. Belteshazzar was Daniel's other name, which he's never called in this book except for it's mentioned. So anyway, King Belshazzar asked Daniel, "Dude, what does it say?" And Daniel says, "Oh, wow. That says that you have been tried and found lacking and that God's taken the kingdom away from you," which is exactly what happens. Darius takes over, restructures, appoints satraps, and 3 presidents, one of which is Daniel. Daniel grows in favor. Darius is going to appoint him the primary president, and his rivals do not like that. And so they say, "Well, Darius, you're such a great king. Why don't you make it illegal for anyone to pray to anyone except for you? And if they do, they'll be thrown into the lion's den." And Darius is like, "Oh, well, that sounds good to me. Why not? I'm the king." And as soon as he does, with this irrevocable decree, they're like, "Oh, by the way, Daniel doesn't do that." And Darius is upset by that, but his decree is by law irrevocable. I don't know why he can't change that because he's king, but apparently he can't. And he ends up sort of cornered and throwing Daniel into the lion's den. But he says to him before he throws him in, "May your God, whom you faithfully serve, deliver you." And the book of Daniel is really about how these people, and perhaps us, relate to God in a society that doesn't always respect God. And so Daniel's thrown in. God saves Daniel. The lions don't eat him. The next morning, the king hurries to the den and calls down. He says this, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, your God, whom you faithfully serve, has your God, whom you faithfully serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Daniel replies, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me, because I was found blameless before him and also before you. O king, I have done no wrong." And Darius pulls him up out of the lion's den, and all the people who had accused him throws them in instead, along with their families. So it stinks to be related to them. And at the end of the day, he makes a decree that people should fear God, the God of Daniel. "For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion has no end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, for he has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." And that is the story of Daniel. And the book ends with a number of apocalyptic visions. But I hope that this has been beneficial to you, and that you are blessed by it, and your kids are blessed by it as well. Have a good day.